Hey, I'm going to show you how I made this box. Check it out.
This build is made from half-inch cherry and box joints. Along the top edge is a sweet inlaid maple border. In the center, an even sweeter inlaid quilt star. And it has enough compartments for your 12 favorite teas. So we're going to kick things off at the table saw by making some rectangles that will be the four sides of our box. I think you're probably familiar with rectangles, so we're going to look at some of the more interesting parts of this project. First up is the inlay that went all the way around the border on the top edge of the box. So I milled some maple and then ripped 4 1/4 inch strips off of it, and then also ripped 16th inch strips of cherry that I glued together to make some maple cherry sandwiches. I planed a clean surface on the strips and then turned them on their side to plane them to their final width. And I love my hand tools for this kind of task. One that could be done on a machine, but the material size or the gentle touch required make a hand tool the better choice. My old machines are great too though, so it was back to the table saw to cut the strips a little bit wider than each of the box sides. Then I carefully lined up my fence and dado blade to cut a groove down the middle of the box sides, which was a very delicate process because coming out of this cut, the board is supported on its edge by two really thin strips that were about a 16th of an inch thick. When I was done with that, I glued the inlay strips into those dados, which was equally as delicate, and I had to make sure to get glue not only in the bottom of the dado but also up on the sides so that those little thin strips would not be damaged. After that glue was dry, it was back to hand tool, so I threw the sides into the vise and used a flush cut saw to trim off the extra, and then when necessary, I cleaned that up a little bit with a chisel. The inlay strip was also a little proud along the edge, so I used my block plane to flush it up. When I cut box joints, I like to start with a separate reference piece. So I cut all the dados on one edge, then flip the piece over and use that same reference piece to index all the cuts on the opposite edge. So for two sides of the box, I use the reference piece. For the other two, I don't. And this lets me cut both ends of a board at the same time instead of indexing two mating pieces together and flipping them over and get them all messed up. I left the top finger on two pieces oversized so that they could be mitered, allowing the inlay on the top edges to meet in the corners. So I set the miter fence to 45 degrees and carefully adjusted the blade height so I didn't cut into the other fingers. The trickiest part of this was dialing in my stops to sneak up on the cut so that the mitered corners met just right. And I still messed it up. My hand slipped a little bit when I was pulling the miter fence back after a cut, and I nicked the blade with the workpiece, making a gap in the miter. The overall dimensions of the box are 13 inches by 10 inches, which is a pretty large tee box, and I don't usually or ever have any 10-inch wide boards just laying around, so I made a couple of book matched panels for the top and bottom of the box from smaller pieces. This one that I'm working on here is the top panel, and after I planed it down to half an inch, I glued it up, and when that dried, I carefully lined up my measurements to cut the panel to size, and as I was bending over, about to plug in the table saw and make the cut.
You okay?
So we took a little break, went inside,
You alright?
wiped off some tears, and then we both got back at it playing. I cross-cut and ripped the top and bottom panels to their final size, and then used a card scraper to clean off glue and planer marks from both panels. The bottom panel is going to sit in a groove that goes around all four sides, which I cut at the router table using a 1/4 inch straight bit. To do this, I had to plunge the cuts and use a stop so that I didn't go all the way through the other side. This way, the groove would be hidden by the fingers when it's all put together. The panel was a tad too big, so I planed a smidge off the sides, making sure to leave a little bit of room for wood movement, since the panel is made from solid wood and not plywood. And then I chamfered the edges to make it easier to fit into the groove. Using the same router setup and bit, I cut grooves in the top as well. And since I already dialed in the fit for the bottom panel, I used it as a reference to trim the top panel to the exact same size. The top panel is thicker than the bottom so that I could make it flush with the sides with the inlay. So I cut rabbets on the edge to allow it to fit into the groove that's cut in the top of the box sides. The router bit leaves rounded ends in the groove, so I squared them up and dry fit the box to ensure everything aligned. Then I took it apart and began working on the quilt star inlay in the top panel. So the first step of that was to make some little diamond shapes, and I chose to use a strip of tiger maple with really incredible figure that I'd been saving for a while, trying to find a worthy project. I used a piece about 5 inches long, so the rest will stay in the lumber rack a while longer. I was actually worried this wouldn't be enough, so I ripped it into two thinner strips, but this turned out to be plenty. Once I had my small pieces, I set the miter fence to 45 degrees, set up a stop, and started cutting some diamonds. I ended up with these 4 diamonds that were 3/4 of an inch thick, which was way thicker than I needed for the inlay, so I cut them into thin strips about 1/4 of an inch at the bandsaw. Then I laid out all the diamonds on my template to arrange the different pieces, and I lightly applied some spray adhesive to temporarily attach it to the top panel. To align the template in the center of the panel, I made some reference lines on the template and on the panel that I lined up when laying down the template. Then I switched my router to the plunge base with a 1/8 inch straight bit to route the recesses for the diamonds, which are also an 1/8 inch deep. Originally, I thought I'd use the paper template as the guide for doing all my routing, but this was my first mistake. The paper didn't cut cleanly, and it was really difficult to tell how close the router bit was to the line, which could have been because my router bit was dull, but one thing was certain. This wasn't going to work for the remaining 7 diamonds. And you can see what a mess this really was. I chiseled out the remaining material to the line, but this was also less than a desirable approach. It was difficult to get a consistent and straight edge this way, so lesson learned. This was only 1 diamond, I had 7 more to go, so here's what I did differently for the rest. With a ruler and a marking knife, I scored the borders of all the diamonds, and then I could just peel up the diamond-shaped pieces of paper. This is one of the reasons that it was really important to lightly apply the spray adhesive to the template. This made it so much easier when routing the diamond recesses because I could clearly see where I was cutting and where the edge of the recess was. I was able to get pretty close to the edge with the router, which also made work with the chisel easier. Another way it made chiseling out what I couldn't get with the router easier and better was that I could place the tip of my chisel in the scored line so the edges I created were clean and straight. One complication I didn't anticipate, but probably should have, was just how fragile the 1/4 inch wide webbing between the diamond recesses would be. Once I finished chiseling 1 diamond and then moved to the adjacent one, that narrow bridge of wood was left largely unsupported, and any pressure from a chisel, especially when chopping across the grain, could easily break it, which brings me to the next mistake I made. I broke one. At this point, the only thing holding that broken piece in place was the paper template on the surface. And for a little bit, I was convinced I had ruined the entire panel, but fortunately, the break was clean enough that I was able to glue the piece back into place. Even found and glued in a smaller fragment that had broken off as well. After the glue up, the repair was surprisingly solid and pretty much invisible. Once the glue had dried, I intentionally left the recess for the final diamond with the broken piece unfinished. Instead, I moved on to preparing the other 7 diamond inlays to be glued into place. Since the maple diamonds were slightly oversized, I sanded them to fit using a disc sander in my table saw. Then I chamfered their bottom edges with a block plane, which made them easier to press into the recesses during the glue up. I also removed the paper template, or as much of it as I could, so that it would be easier to clean up any glue squeeze out. And then I started gluing in the diamond inlays one at a time. This was pretty straightforward, and you can see here the unfinished diamond recess. I didn't finish chiseling it after the repair because I was concerned that applying more pressure to that unsupported piece of webbing would just break it again. So to avoid that, I supported it by gluing in the adjacent diamond inlay and all the others that were ready. If I were to do this again, I'd go one diamond at a time. Router, chisel, glue the inlay, cut it flush, then move on to the adjacent inlay. It would take longer, but it would ensure that all those thin webbings in between the diamond inlays are properly supported and don't break. When all the inlays were glued in, I used this board to apply pressure, then cleaned up any glue that squeezed out and clamped it down again. And the Reynolds wrap is to make sure that I don't glue my 2 boards together. When that dried, I finished chiseling out the last recess that had the broken webbing, and having the adjacent diamond inlay glued into place next to it made a huge difference in the stability of it. I didn't have to be as careful when I was chiseling it compared to when it was completely unsupported. When that was done, I glued in the inlay and then used a small flush cut saw to trim the proud inlays, sanded them flush with 60 grit sandpaper. After that, I used a card scraper to remove the leftover sanding marks, and at the same time, I sanded the inside parts of the box, which was a lot easier than trying to do it after it's been assembled. Now I'm ready to start assembling the box. I applied glue in between all the box joints and checked for square as I went. After I let the glue dry, I flushed up all the proud box joints, starting with the chisel and then with the block plane. Then I had a few more repairs that I had to do. I made an extra cut when working on the mitered box joint, so at the top of all 4 sides I had a gap that I glued a piece into, and then my mitered corners weren't perfect either, so I filled them with a little glue and sawdust, then sanded the whole box. Next, I separated the lid from the box at the table saw, making the cut on the edge of one of the box joints so that I don't have one finger that's smaller than the others. I added some spacers before making the last cut so that the blade doesn't get pinched when the lid is completely free from the box. Then I planed the edges on the box and underside of the lid to get them totally even and to remove any leftover saw marks. I moved on to the internal liner and dividers that form the individual T compartments, starting with the liners. I mitered them at 45 degrees and snuck up on the perfect fit by trimming off tiny bits and test fitting them in the box after each cut. Then I cut the dividers to length and ripped all the interior parts to their final width. I was then ready to start on the joinery for how all these interior parts would fit together. I cut 1/8 inch deep grooves in the liners that the dividers would fit into and then used half lap joints for the dividers. I was originally considering a latch for the front, but I couldn't find one that I liked, so instead of a latch, I opted for a simpler and cleaner look, just made a finger pull by filing away the front edge of the box. I also bought some butt hinges from Amazon in an antique brass finish that I thought complemented the cherry quite nicely. These hinges were intended to be installed with a mortise, so I used a router to cut away most of the material for that, and I cleaned them up with a chisel until the hinge fit perfectly in the mortise. The last steps were to apply finish, screw the hinges in place, and assemble the interior dividers. For the finish, I used a couple coats of Danish oil, and it made that curly maple look really great on the inlay. I did not glue in either the liner or the dividers because they fit together tightly and I didn't feel like glue was necessary. This way, if I ever want to use the box for something else, I can. Assembling the liner and internal dividers now completes this project. Despite the mistakes I made, I really like how it turned out. I'm especially proud of the quilt star, inlay, and how well the liner and dividers fit together. And I learned a lot designing and working on this project, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. If you did, give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to make one of these tea boxes for yourself, check out the description where you can find a link to the plans including templates and detailed instructions. Thanks for watching.